The Los Angeles Chargers have found their next great super playmaker. Coming out of high school, Quentin JOHNSTON was a 4-star recruit and was expected to always translate to the NFL. He was one of the biggest wide receiver signings in school history and did not disappoint throughout his 3-year career at the Horned Frogs. As a junior, he became one of the best receivers in America and helped TCU get all the way to the college football playoff. His insane size and athleticism are more than likely going to translate to the NFL, and many scouts believe that Johnston's best football years were always going to be on Sunday. Johnston might have more potential than any receiver in the 2023 NFL Draft, and in today's video, I want to introduce you to who he is, talk about what he did at TCU, and why he is such a great fit for the Chargers. But before we get started, be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new and love football content, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could cover next. Now, let's get started and talk about the insane rise of Quentin JOHNSTON. It was extremely difficult to find information about Johnston's early years, but he apparently grew up in a military family, which helped make him the person he is today. Like a lot of players I talk about, they obviously took a liking to all sports, but specifically, he loved football. The kid was fast, athletic, and hardworking, so he played wide receiver and quickly blew up on the national scene. He pretty much had all the traits you were looking for in a big-time recruit, and that is why early on he was seen as a top 100 player. But he was very quiet, and many did not know where schools stood in his recruitment. Many assumed he'd probably stay in the state of Texas. Despite having interest in multiple programs, one program in particular felt like home pretty early on. He said, quote, "Being that I'm from Temple is a small homey feel, and TCU resembles that a lot. So it's kind of like something I'm used to already." So it did look like TCU was an early frontrunner in his recruitment, but that's not how it would play out. Baylor was close to home, Texas was the most prestigious program in the state, and he loved Oklahoma, their tradition, and their wide receivers coach, so it wasn't like TCU was a lock by any means. In fact, the Horned Frogs lost the battle. He visited Texas and loved everything about the program. Add in the fact that his former teammate Jared Wiley was a Longhorn at the time, it made Texas a very intriguing option, and he later committed to them. He chose the Longhorns over TCU, Baylor, and Oklahoma, and it wasn't just for football reasons. The biggest factor for JOHNSTON when making his decision was where he could major in business. He wanted to receive the best degree and be a well-rounded person, and he thought that the University of Texas could provide that experience for him. He really loved the Macomb School of Business and had this to say, quote, "First of all, my major. That's obviously the number one thing I'm looking for. The homey feel, I want to come in the first day and feel like I've been there before." Combining that with the relationship with Texas's coaching staff, it seemed like a great fit for both parties. Not only was JOHNSTON a football star, but he was also an elite track runner and won the Texas recruiting slam dunk contest, which was obviously in the sport of basketball. JOHNSTON to Texas looked like a slam dunk, but then Texas fired his lead recruiter, Drew Maringer. This would be a death blow to his recruitment as he decided to reopen and flip to a school that he loved early on, and that was TCU. He said, quote, "It's a good business school. It's a big family. Every time I go there, the coaches are so happy to see me. That's like the good feeling, and I like that every time I go there." This was a huge addition for TCU, as JOHNSTON was the second highest ranked recruit during the Gary Patterson era. According to 24/7 Sports, JOHNSTON was a 4-star recruit, the number 14 wide receiver, and the 71st best player in the class of 2020. So, how would he end up doing? Going into his TCU career, the Horned Frogs were in an interesting spot. Max Duggan was the starting quarterback, they had 4 different running backs battling for the starting position, and you'd have to beat out more experienced receivers such as J.D. Spielman, Tay Barber, and Darius Davis. JOHNSTON would end up becoming the best receiver on the team, and he'd pretty much show that from the beginning. In his first career game against Iowa State, he caught a touchdown pass on one of his 2 grabs. In week 2, they'd play against Texas, and this would come against the school he formerly committed to. In that game, he caught 3 passes for 70 yards. Against Oklahoma, he caught 4 passes for 40 yards, and then against Baylor, he once again had another good performance. His next 2 games against West Virginia and Texas Tech would be really slow, before he would have an incredible end to the 2020 season. Against Oklahoma State, he caught 3 passes for 114 yards and averaged 38 yards per reception. Then he finished the season with 5 catches for 133 yards and 2 touchdowns against Louisiana Tech. As a freshman, JOHNSTON would catch 22 passes for 487 yards and would finish with 3 total touchdowns. He made Big 12 history as he set the freshman record for yards per reception, and no one really talked about that. He was a freshman All-American because of this, and combining all that, expectations were going to be through the roof for him in 2021. His quarterback agreed. Max Duggan said, quote, "He's a super talented receiver as a freshman. He came in and didn't blink an eye. He jumped right in there and acted like he was a junior or a senior already." 2021 would be pretty similar for him, as Zach Evans would become the star running back and Max Duggan and Chandler Morris were the two quarterbacks. In his first game against Duquesne, he caught 4 passes for 38 yards, and then in a 2-point victory over Cal, he had 5 catches for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that set the tone for the remainder of the season. Flash forward to mid-October, and Johnston put his name on the NFL radar. Against the number 4 Oklahoma Sooners, Johnston caught 7 passes for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns, and torched that Sooner defense and made a SportsCenter top 10 catch. He didn't stop there though, as he went for over 100 yards the following week against West Virginia, and then had a statement game against Baylor. In that game, he had 5 catches for 142 yards and a touchdown, and people were starting to wonder just how good Johnston could be. Unfortunately, he battled injuries, as it did affect him for a good chunk of the season, as he missed 3 games and wasn't himself for a couple of those matchups as well. He ended up becoming a first-team All-Big 12 selection after he finished with 33 catches for 612 yards and 6 touchdowns. In his first game against Colorado, he catched 3 passes for 22 yards before 2 more catches for 22 yards against Tarleton State. Not a great start, but also not a terrible start. Things really wouldn't pick up that much in the following 2 weeks, as he catched 3 passes against SMU, and then 4 against Oklahoma. Through 4 games, he only had 12 catches and didn't register a single touchdown, but lately, Johnston's been putting it together. It first came in a game against number 19 Kansas. In a battle of unbeatens, TCU would go on the road, and Johnston would catch a career-high 14 passes for 206 yards and a touchdown, and that touchdown he had was an eventual game-winning score, which was acrobatic. I don't know how he secured anyway. That gave TCU their 5th win of the season, and then the following week, he'd go off again. Against Oklahoma State, he'd catch 8 passes for 180 yards and a touchdown, and they would beat number 8 Oklahoma State in double overtime, and TCU was once again still undefeated. The next weekend against number 17 Kansas State, he'd catch 4 more catches for 74 yards and a score, and then he would score another touchdown against West Virginia. At this point, TCU had remained undefeated and were marching towards the college football playoff, but they would have to go on the road for a very difficult matchup against number 18 Texas. In this game, TCU got off to a slow start and ultimately only won by a touchdown, and Johnston had 3 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. After that, they'd go on the road to play against Baylor, and that game was a shocker. Johnston ended up catching 4 passes for 48 yards, and they had that late field goal to win on the road. TCU's undefeated playoff hopes were alive, and just a couple weeks later, they would play in the Big 12 championship game. They'd end up being matched up with number 10 Kansas State, and Johnston had one of his best games of the year. Against the Wildcats, he caught 4 passes for 139 yards, but they ended up losing by 3 in overtime. It still didn't ultimately matter though, as they would still get a chance to play in the college football playoff, where he would then go off again. Against number 2 Michigan, he caught 6 passes for 163 yards and a touchdown, and scouts were now sold on him. After that, they'd end up playing against Georgia in the national championship game, and his 1 catch for 3 yards made no difference in the 65-7 blowout. It was an embarrassing performance, but an amazing season for both TCU and Johnston nonetheless. He caught 60 passes for 1,069 yards and 6 touchdowns. He declared for the 2023 NFL Draft and was easily expected to be a first-round pick. According to NFL Mock Database, he was listed as the 25th overall prospect, with his highest rank coming 6th overall. In reality, he'd end up getting taken with the 21st overall pick in the first round by the Los Angeles Chargers. He was 1 pick after JSN, and he'll look to become the next great target for Justin Herbert. As I've said many times, Johnston is a big-bodied physical receiver who fits the exact prototype for what an NFL franchise wants. Many will wonder if he'll be able to stay healthy, or if he'll ever be able to unlock that untapped potential, but personally, I think Johnston's a freak of nature who, if developed properly, could by far be the best receiver from the 2023 class. But what do you guys think? If you're a TCU or a Chargers fan, what do you think of Quentin Johnston, and what player should I take a look at in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.